Hi, Rod Fleming here. And I just wanted to express my thoughts a little bit about the takeover of Twitter by Elon Musk. Now, obviously, if you know me, you'll know that I think this is a huge step forward. Absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be more pleased. But I woke up this morning and I checked my emails. I noticed one that had come through. It was, a notification somebody posted something. I went and had a look, and here it was, Twitter board has accepted 43 billion. And when this process goes through, which will take 3 to 6 months, Twitter will become a wholly owned, privately owned company owned by Elon Musk. Obviously, Elon Musk has banking backers, but the majority of the money is actually his. So that's fantastic. That's wonderful. I think a lot of other people have commented on the free speech considerations behind this. Obviously, I have been very, very concerned about the way that free speech has been going, especially in what is a very important election year in the United States. Now, the fact is that most of the rest of the world doesn't get a say in what happens in the United States, so we're completely powerless to affect anything. And yet what happens is that because of the global dominance of their technology companies, we're essentially forced to live with American politics, whether we like it or not, which is terrible, and that should not happen. In the future, we may well have to look at ways of preventing that from happening, diluting the power of these large tech companies such that they can actually take American ideas and spread them across the planet. That's for another day. The important part was to put a full stop to the issue of wokeness, that it had to stop. And when I say wokeness, I mean everything from critical race theory, which is just critical theory but with colour, through to radical feminism, through to all of the whole gamut of the extreme left's political positions, which in the last few years have become simply intolerable. Simply intolerable for anybody who is a moderate or a centrist, let alone a right-winger. I mean, I don't consider myself a right-winger, but apparently I'm an extreme right-winger because I think that things like abortion are wrong. Well, that is a perfectly legitimate point of view to hold. And yet people would gleefully cancel me, prevent me from having a platform because I say that. It's something for debate. It's not something to be silent. And just because I don't have a uterus doesn't mean I can't argue about it. That's cancel culture. And cancel culture has been delivered an absolutely huge blow. And as I say, it's in a very important year because the November elections in the United States will decide the makeup of both houses of Congress and the Senate. I believe it's half of each come up for election because they're very much a rolling process in the United States. But if the Democrats lose their majorities in both houses, then effectively that fool, the FJ Biden, will be out. He may well retain hold of power for a while, but he won't actually have any power because he would be what is called a lame duck president. I mean, he's already a lame duck. He'll just be even lamer. I mean, we saw the other day that his Build Back Better program has been put back. It's not going to be voted on this year. It's not going to be voted on until after the new year. And frankly, I suggest that will mean that it's doomed to failure because what are they going to do? If they lose their majorities, and there are already some Democrats who refuse to go along with this, what is effectively a massively socialist spending program, it's dead in the water. That's his flagship policy. Dead in the water. How wonderful. How absolutely terrific. Let's go back to Twitter. Twitter has been, for many years, it has been the marketplace of ideas for those who like to consider themselves to be the intelligentsia, the literate elite. One of them was on the other day saying, we are the ones who decide how society should be shaped. And they have done that by controlling the debates on Twitter, by saying, you can't talk about this, because if you do, you're going to get shut out. You're going to get banned, or you're going to get shadow banned, or you're going to get your stuff pushed right down to the bottom of the pile so nobody sees it. And these are the techniques that they have been using, not just since 2016. They have been using it for a very long time. All extremely nasty, and all completely against any form of freedom of expression, and against the rights of all people, not just Americans, to express themselves freely. In this year, they were going to use Twitter to slam down as hard as they could on the Republicans to ensure that they would not gain control of both houses, either or both houses, in the November elections. So Musk taking over Twitter and saying, that's it, this is now a freedom of speech platform, means that they will not be able to do that. They will not be able to use Twitter to control the broader base of ideas by using it as, if you like, a focal hotspot, which is controlled and is going to promote the Liberal Democrat Party's ideas. Now, these are all terrible ideas. They're awful. But in fact, you were not able to say that, because saying that they were awful, that's it. I mean, I have to ask myself, you know, it becomes quite a relief to wake up, and that's my wife singing in the background, to wake up and know that I can say that a trans woman is actually a feminized male and not be thrown off the bloody platform. You know, that's a statement of simple fact. All trans women are males. What's the debate? There is no debate. They're all males. You cannot be a trans woman unless you are a male. Basic stuff. But the fact is that in cancel culture, you're not allowed to say things like that. You'll be closed down for saying it. If saying something like, I don't believe that all women have a right to abortion, bang, that's you, closed down. Not allowed. Not allowed to say that. You're not allowed even to think it. And the control over Twitter has been for many years the way that this fascist, and it is fascist, point of view has been forced on everyone else. It's been through Twitter. It's been by controlling what's allowed on Twitter. Because what is allowed on Twitter is then disseminated by all the journalists who use it to the other organs of the media. The fact is, if you look at any media, any of the gaslight media particularly, they're constantly quoting Twitter. You know, you'll see, on some stories, you'll see a dozen quotes from Twitter. They didn't bother going out and asking anyone. They just went on Twitter and had a look. And if Twitter is controlling what is being said, and in fact, it is the left wing which is controlling Twitter and then controlling what is being said, then you're only getting one side of the argument. You're not getting a balanced viewpoint. And that is a disaster. That has been an absolute disaster. Has been so for many years now. Because Twitter has taken this view that you're not allowed to express the opposing point of view. I mean, if I were to say, and why should I not say, that white men invented most of the things that have improved human life over the last 200 years, I would get thrown off places like that. I would get shot down. But it's actually true. It's absolutely true. Saying such things is not politically correct, and therefore it can't be allowed. Twitter was the mechanism through which these ideas were forced upon everyone else. Twitter was it was the big gear in the middle. It's not particularly big gear itself, but still it's a powerful gear. You know, but it drives all these other gears around it, which are all just disseminating the messages that are coming out from Twitter. Okay? So the fact that Twitter has become a free speech platform in which you will not be allowed to just remove somebody because you don't like what he's saying, which has been not just possible on Twitter, but has been active Twitter policy for many years, means that you could actually see real freedom of speech actually arriving, not just on Twitter, but in all the other organs that look to Twitter for their lead. So all the journalists who write for other newspapers, for the gaslight media, for blogs and for vlogs and for websites and all the rest of it, because they all look to Twitter. All they ever do, all a journalist ever does these days is read press releases and look at Twitter. That's all they ever do. So they're now going to be looking at a Twitter which is open and free, not one which is a pure left-wing echo chamber, which is what it has been. So that means that we need to now think of how much further this revolution could go. Because make no mistake, you're seeing the first stages of a real revolution. People have had enough of woke culture. We've had enough of critical race theory. We've had enough of the trans ideology. And that doesn't mean that we hate black people. That doesn't mean that we hate genuine transsexuals. My goodness, my wife is a transsexual. I don't hate her. I hate people who are obviously not even slightly trans, claiming that status and saying that I can't say anything about it. You know, that a guy in a suit can call himself a woman and use a woman's toilet, and I'm not allowed to say anything. That a 6'2" boy, athlete, can swim in women's tournaments and call himself a woman when he's obviously a 6-foot boy. I couldn't say that. I wasn't allowed to say that. Now, hopefully, I will be able to say that. And we need to look at how much further this can go. And Twitter was the third of the really big organs of social media. The other two, obviously, being Facebook and Google. Google through YouTube. The YouTube comment section is a vast repository of ideas. And YouTube over the last, certainly over the last 4 years and probably longer, has been viciously censoring what is actually said in the response section to videos which it does actually allow up on its channels. And at the same time, it has been shadow banning. It has been suppressing those videos that it doesn't like and pushing those videos that politically it does like. And we have to look, they have to now look at themselves, because with Twitter no longer being one of the club, one of the wokest club, they're going to be open. Google is going to be open to a great deal more criticism for their absolutely appalling behavior. The same is going to happen to Facebook. Facebook, exactly the same, is ludicrously wokest. Doesn't allow even the discussions of things that it doesn't approve of. Yet it's going to look at Twitter and go, what happens if we start to lose market share to Twitter? What happens, because, you know, just so you know this, young people don't use Facebook. You know, 20 years ago, or just under 20 years ago, yes, they did. Now they don't. Now they use things like TikTok. Facebook is actually used mainly by middle-class people, middle management, that sort of people, ordinary people, if you like, on Mrs. Joe Soap and all the rest. They're the ones who are using it. Are these people actually that woke? And the answer is no, they're not. So they're in the same position as many people on Twitter were, which is, we hate what this bloody platform does, but what are we supposed to do? I mean, my position was I wouldn't engage, and it remains. I will not engage with people on Twitter. And until Twitter actually does become a genuine free speech platform, no, I'm not going to allow myself to be put in a position where I could be removed just because I say something that somebody doesn't like. Their terms of use are so obscure, nobody could possibly know what was right and what was wrong. And Twitter, believe me, it certainly in the past would never tell you. The same was true Facebook. They won't tell you. If you do something wrong, it's like, you've done that wrong. And they won't tell you what you've done wrong. Just, you've breached our terms and conditions. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And we've seen the same thing from YouTube, although I have to say that the YouTube complaints section has been somewhat more usable in that, you know, if you make a protest, then usually they'll actually at least look at your protest, which it's obvious that they didn't in places like Twitter and Facebook. They just said, nah, we've made a decision, you're stuffed, John. That's it. So perhaps Google is already a little bit aware that it's heading into a very dark place. Why are these people heading into a dark place? Well, the fact is, today we have results that show, first of all, that CNN Plus, which was a video streaming service launched by CNN, which is a ludicrous, appalling left-wing sewer, has closed. It was only launched at the beginning of the month. It's now dead. It lasted less than 30 days. It's gone. It's not making any money. Didn't make enough money to justify going on. Netflix, which is an absolute giant doing the same thing, has lost billions. Absolutely billions. The last figures I have were 90 billion wiped off its stock market value because it's too wokest. And Elon Musk himself says Netflix is so woke now that it's unwatchable. And I would have to agree with it. I mean, I don't watch it. It's absolutely unwatchable. This stuff is completely wokest. If you look at Disney, the Disney Corporation got into a spat with the state of Florida because Disney didn't like the fact that Florida passed rules that said, well, no, you can't actually have teachers grooming children. You know, don't talk to them about sex until they're at least a little bit older. You know, let them have a couple of years in school without having to think about this, like most normal people did. And guess what? 50 billion wiped off their market value. Shareholders won't take that kind of nonsense for long. Facebook is different because the majority shareholder is still Mark Zuckerberg. He could hold out longer. The others, however, are going to have to think about this. Shareholder power is what brought Twitter down. The understanding we have, the stories that are coming out, that the board, this is the board which Elon Musk described as dysfunctional, fought as long and as hard as it could, but in the end it was shareholder power that said, no, you will have to accept this deal. The shareholders wanted to sell to Musk because his offer was so good. They said, no, you can't hold out. The board of directors was apparently unable to find a white knight to come in and replicate or better Musk's offer, and therefore that's it. They have a duty, or it is a legal duty, it's called a fiduciary duty, to do the best they possibly can for the shareholders in terms of the value of their assets. So they had no choice but to say, okay, we're going to sell. Otherwise, they would have been breaking the law and they would have ended up in jail. These laws in the United States and elsewhere are taken very, very seriously. You don't get away with things like that. The rest of the interwebs, if you like, now needs to have a really big think and a word with itself. I agree. It's true that Twitter was the smallest of the big three, but at the same time, it was in many ways the most influential of all of them. Because that's where the journalists went. That's where all the movers and shakers, as they like to call themselves, went. You know? That's where the ideas were thrashed out and formed. That's where, for example, in the coming American elections, the Democrats would have expected to make great running, not just running on Twitter, but able to get stories from Twitter out into the other media to support their candidates. That's not going to happen anymore. Or at least it's not going to happen without opposition, because the Republicans will be able to do the same thing without fear of being shadow banned, without fear of having their voices suppressed, which is exactly what Twitter has been used for in the past. So the other big two, that is Google and Facebook, now are in a very interesting position. I will be interested to see how they react. My own view is that if a strong populist president gets in 2024, I mean, the groundwork will be laid in the next 2 years by a Republican Senate and Congress, hopefully, then companies like Google are going to be broken up anyway. They're going to be told, that's it. You will have to sell YouTube. You will have to break up your business because you're too big. And Facebook will be the same. They'll be told, no, this is completely unfair. You're acting completely against antitrust and monopoly laws. Therefore, you will have to sell parts of your organization. The most obvious one would be that Facebook would sell WhatsApp, which makes a lot of money for it, and possibly Instagram too. They'll be told they have to do it because it is in the gift of an incoming president to make those rules. You know, these are businesses. This doesn't affect with freedom of speech. Governments can set the rules by which businesses work. Now, that's absolutely true that these companies could then say, oh, well, screw you, we're going offshore, we're going to move to China. Well, good luck with that, guys. Really, really good luck with it. If you do that, then what you'll find is that the Americans will just say, well, you ain't coming to our place to play, just as they have done to Chinese companies, and that'll be it. That'll be it. The market will be closed to you. So, it's going to be very, very interesting. This is a terrific day with terrific news. I sincerely hope to see it carried through, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Just before I forget, I'm launching new media. I won't be producing very much on YouTube, maybe one a week, and it will only be a short which will advertise a longer piece on Patreon. That's it, I'm afraid. I need the money. It's just not viable. YouTube is not financially viable. And I have known for many years why. They suppress my output because I discuss autogynephilia. That's it. They are so leftist they can't even stand people discussing it. So they push my content to the bottom of the pile. Absolutely incredible. That's the way it is. However, there are other media which don't have these constraints. I will be moving to them. I'll still leave, basically trailers and adverts on YouTube. But that's where I'll be. I won't be here. The bulk of my stuff will be elsewhere. And I will tell you where when we get there. In the meantime, go and have a beer, because you really deserve it. We really deserve a beer. After all the trouble we've had, the ups and downs we've had, the fights we've had, the utterly depressing, dark, black miasma of leftist orthodoxy. Finally, there's a chink in the armour, and we can see the light. Thank you, Elon. Elon Musk, thank you very much. I appreciate greatly what you've done, and we should all appreciate it greatly.